Welcome to Beyond Time Signatures.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Today with us we have Mr. Joseph Stevenson, also known as the guy behind Regressor, Star Systems, and many other projects. So, Joseph, I would love to know how was your early music life like, and how did you get started with music?
So music has been a part of my life since I can remember. Really, my mom is a professional pianist, and there has just been music kind of in the house ever since I can remember, and I think that's super important for someone's musical development, just to be exposed to as much music as possible from a super early age. So I think it has always been really close to me for that reason. Um, but I didn't really, weirdly, I didn't really enjoy it much. I was kind of made to play the violin from the age of like 3, 4 years old.
Oh
I think
no.
yeah, I think my parents had this idea that I was going to be some kind of child prodigy, and they pushed me quite hard to learn violin from quite a young age, and I hated it, but I'm very grateful now that they did, because I think the just the musicianship and the ear that I have now for music and picking up stuff is not what it would be without that.
I
So
see.
that was kind of up until I was about maybe like 11, 12. I was kind of I was playing the violin, and then I got into guitar when I was about 12, 13. I got really into guitar when I was like 13, because I started listening to like rock and metal, and I got into sort of more and more heavy stuff. And I think that I'm sure most people who were into metal as a teenager will agree that there is a certain amount of like obsessiveness that just
Yes.
that just kind of snowballs, as soon as you start listening to like the super heavy stuff. Um, and yeah, I just got like really really obsessive with guitar, and I just wanted to. I just That's all I wanted to do. And I think my parents were a bit relieved, because I'd sacked off violin as soon as I was physically able to fight my mom off. and 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 I think they were like, oh no, like, is he just gonna play PS2 for forever now? But yeah, so I got really into guitar. I was like, my favorite band was like Children of Bodom. I was really into
Hell yeah.
like I was really into like Children of Bodom. I think just in particular because of the sort of super melodic and quite virtuosic guitar stuff. I think that
Yeah.
really did a lot for me, and just kind of learning their stuff. Because I was never really good with like lessons, with like being taught uh, instruments like ever, and guitar was no exception. So I pretty much just taught myself through learning the music that I loved. Um, and yeah, it was kind of like Children of Bodom, Dream Theater, um, like Slipknot, Bullet for My Valentine, and like all that good stuff. And then maybe later on, kind of like Architects and um,
All
yeah,
the big
Periphery,
big guys in
Meshuggah stuff.
metalcore now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've mellowed out quite a lot, but that was very much my 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 kind of introduction to guitar music came through came through metal. But then when I was a kid, it was weird, because I my mom, as I said, was a pianist, and my dad isn't really a musician, uh, but he loves music, and he's really really into like um, the Beatles and the Kings, and he listened to a lot of jazz, and so I had this kind of weird, like, one part of my musical exposure was strictly classical because my mom's tastes are very much in the classical world, and then the other side was just like a, 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 a massive like wealth of just like really random stuff from the last 50 years, from sort of like rock to pop to like jazz to musical theater and stuff like that. So
Like
yeah,
amalgamation of many genres and many styles.
totally, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So then, like, did you pursue music as like a thing for a school or university, or was it something else?
uh well, yeah, I ended up doing in the end, but that wasn't really the plan. I'd kind of uh by the time I was getting through high school and starting to think about university and stuff, I'd kind of resigned myself to music being a hobby, and not really something that I could sustain a living off, which is not the right attitude. um, and I'm really glad I didn't commit to that, because I was going I was fully like working to apply for like business courses and stuff at university, and I'm really glad I didn't do that. But it was kind of a last minute decision. Uh, when I don't know, like the penny dropped at some point, and I was like, oh, why am I this? I'm gonna hate this. I feel like I'm good enough at music to actually pursue it. So I ended up doing a general music degree,
Okay,
in,
nice.
in Edinburgh, which was 4 years, and then I graduated that in 2018, and I did a masters in composition for film and TV, and that's kind of now I guess my main job, regressor, and my other sort of projects like that over the years have been very much kind of passion projects, I guess,
Yep.
that I love, and I get so much out of them, but they don't really pay the pay the rent,
That's true. Prog doesn't pay bills, so I totally
No.
get that.
Yeah,
I totally
yeah,
get that.
yeah. But yeah, that was but still, like the kind of university route into music is a bit of a strange one, and I learned a huge amount from studying in quite a old prestigious institution, but there was definitely a lot of snobbery and stuff that I didn't agree with in the attitudes there. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody. I think it really depends what your kind of goals are, what your end game is, and if you don't have one, that's also fine. I didn't really know what I was doing until I got there. I kind of I kind of started to make up my mind about what I wanted to pursue within a year or two of being at university.
I see. And would you say that university helped you more with connections and what you wanted to do rather than a preset curriculum that they had, which you just absorbed?
I would say, sorry for the sirens. It's just constant sirens here.
That's totally fine.
I would say my masters that I did in film composing, yeah, for sure. That was very much kind of, it was very practical. It was very industry centered, and it was all about kind of networking and making connections. My undergrad was more of a traditional music degree, and it was more theoretical and more. You could kind of specialize in the latter half of it, and you could do I learned quite a lot about orchestration and more experimental compositional techniques and
Oh,
history and
nice.
stuff. And through writing my dissertation, I wrote my dissertation on orchestral sampling and how orchestral sampling over the last sort of 20, 30 years has really changed how we hear orchestral music and how we compose orchestral music,
I see.
which is something I find super fascinating as someone who doesn't really have proper kind of classical training, and wouldn't be able to do the job I'm doing now 30, 40 years ago, without this without this technology, without computers and sample
That's
libraries and
fair.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us wouldn't have the necessary, like tools if it weren't for sample libraries. And shout out Spitfire and all those companies for making us. And I mean, would you say that even like 5 7 years ago, like the articulations and the quality of samples were like to some extent differentiable from like real instruments, but now at this point, like I personally cannot tell.
Yeah, they're just insanely good, and they're just getting better. And yeah, I would say particularly the last sort of 8 9 years, they've just got exponentially good. Um, I would say I can tell, but quite often what you're actually hearing, even in sort of finished products, is a blend of live recordings and
Oh,
samples. Um, I think, well, I'm talking like the films, TV that have budget to record a lot of the music. Even then, I think it's unlikely that you'll be hearing just purely recorded material. Um,
interesting.
maybe if the composer or the director is like a massive purist and wants to have everything recorded and have none of the samples left in there, then yeah, that's cool. But generally it will just sound better. It will sound, because these big like blockbuster scores are going for like scale, it can make a massive difference production wise to have a layer of samples, and there's often just like layers of synths in there as well. That's quite a common thing. You wouldn't really be able to hear it, but you'd notice it if you heard it without it, because it just adds a layer of like a sub bass,
Hmm.
kind of doubling
I see.
like the double bass line and stuff like that. Um, it's not really super audible, like you couldn't really pick it out, but you would notice the difference if it wasn't there.
I see. So like just to make it more lush and
Yeah,
rich sounding.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
It's so yeah. I think the levels of you know the process of producing uh, orchestral music has definitely become a lot more. Uh, the producing element has become a lot more important than it was before, and obviously arranging is you need to be able to arrange, but also just making it sound good sonically.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it is just is so important in this day and age where you got to demo everything, and if you can have it sounding as like close to a final product as
Yeah. Less
you
work you have
possibly
to do.
can. Yeah, exactly.
Makes
And
sense.
because the tools are there for you to do that, and potential like clients and um, you know connections know that the tools are there, then you kind of you can't really get away with not doing that.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I would like to come back to the film composing aspects of stuff, but
Sure.
I'm like very curious about like when like was it because of your masters that you made a move from Scotland to London?
Yeah, yeah. So
I see.
I moved from Edinburgh to London in 2000 beginning of 2019. to
Okay.
start my masters. It's not. It wasn't actually in London. It was just outside London,
Yeah.
but close enough to London to kind of call it that.
I see. I see. And like, what university did you attend there?
The film school is called the National Film and Television School. Um,
Ah,
it's just yeah, it's one of the leading film schools in the UK, and it's really good. It's a lot very different to my university experience. Um,
hmm.
it's a lot smaller and a lot more of a bubble, both socially and professionally, which is cool. A lot more like-minded people, and I had a great time. I thought it was super intense. It was really hard work, and it was 2 years, which is a long time for a
Yeah,
master's
for
degree. But I think because everybody was kind of doing everything on campus and everyone was kind of in the same boat, which was nice. Um, and everyone was in the same like little town, which was completely different to university where you've kind of got like a whole city around you.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And I can imagine, like, because of it being like a well knit community of your university, like the opportunities that you would get not only as like a job, but even as an intern would be like so much like a real, like the real world experience that we call it. So like, have you had like, in your course of like 2 years, were there any opportunities that you were like blown away that, dude, am I working on this project may by this guy, or like for this movie or this director? Like, I would love to know that.
Yeah, man. Oh, you mean since I graduated film school?
Even after graduation, and if you had like an experience while you were doing that, I would love to know like those experiences.
Not so much whilst I was there. Um, I have definitely had experiences like that since while I was there, because the nature of the industry is very much based on your kind of personal connections with people. People work with people who they know and they've worked with before, and they will continue
I
to
see.
work with them if you know if they can, because why would you work with someone else if you've got a good working relationship with this person who can
Yeah,
do this thing. uh, but before I went to film school, I didn't really have any connections, and part of the value of doing that course was to gain that network, or to at least start that network and start building it. And yeah, I think it is solely because of that I've managed to sustain myself, with just my music since. And
nice.
yeah, it was kind of like, I think it was more like a like an an industry. It felt more like a sort of 2 year long industry networking event, in a lot of ways, than it did like a higher education course.
I see. So like, do you have like, from your experience of like 2 years of being there, do you have some like, thumb rules of like, how to get, like, because I know a lot of introverted people in the music scene, and so if they ask me, because I'm a dummy, like I don't think, I just reach out to people straight away without
Oh no, I
thinking.
mean, I would never tell you not to reach out to people. I think that is one of the best things you can do. Whether it's, obviously I can only really speak for the the industries and the scenes that I have been a part of and that I have experience in. But yeah, I think reaching out to people, and just putting yourself on people's radars is super important, and not getting discouraged by just getting no reply or very little reply, because that's kind of part of it, depending on who you're reaching out to. The higher profile people you're trying to get in contact, the more likely that you're going to get nothing, and that's just kind of
Yeah.
that is just how it works, right? I'm sure you'll have experienced that. But yeah, I'm the weird thing about my work generally is that I kind of I kind of have to wait for people to come to me, uh, and that's great in a way, because it means that like I'm not often like job hunting, as it were. But it's also kind of terrifying because there isn't really a kind of, I think generally speaking, if you most people, like, they don't have a job, you apply for a job, you either don't get that job or you get that job. Um, Whereas like it's a bit more weird and fluid, I think, in music. Um, if you particularly if you're a composer, and you're doing something that is just kind of quite creative, and you're not just a hired hand for something, and so yeah, I do find myself like, oh man, I don't actually know where the next job is coming from when I finish this one,
Nice.
and that is like terrifying. But it's been fine so far. So you just kind of like, you get into a bit of a mentality where you're like, well, it's probably going to be okay, but the dread never goes away.
I see.
It's
It's more uncertain, like, and spontaneous, right?
yeah,
Than like a standard 9 to 5 job where you know exactly what you're gonna do today.
yeah. It's so I'm so grateful that I get to do this for a living. It's like I have to pinch myself, and I have to, if I'm having a shitty day or a shitty week or something, I have to, I do have to catch myself when I'm being like, oh god, I actually hate this. Don't think I'm cut out for this, because like this is such a dream for me to be
Yes.
able to stay afloat, even if it is just staying afloat. It's still better. It's still better than the alternative, that is not doing that, and doing something that I'm not passionate about. My heart isn't in.
I totally get what you mean, man. So coming back to the fun projects, like, can you share some of your really cool projects that when you first heard about that opportunity, like, got you super pumped?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Okay, so I want you to share some experiences or some like, gig that
Mm.
really was surprising to you in the best way possible. That, oh shit, I'm gonna work with these guys or for this movie, etc. Show.
Yeah, I think the first like proper, uh, I guess, starstruck moment I had was, I did a track with, Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater,
Star Systems.
for Star Systems. Yeah, but it
Yes,
was
yes,
that
I
was
know that.
like, I think that was in like 2019. I did that track, but he basically, we got in contact through this like orchestral medley that I did, because I was when I was at uni, and I was getting more into like film music and film composing. Uh, I was really working on like my kind of arranging, my like orchestral arranging chops, which was kind of a way in which I did that, and I got better at that, was by just doing sort of medleys of like rock and metal music that I really loved and also knew inside out, so I could just do it all by ear.
Yeah.
So I did one. The first one I did was of, Children of Bodom, and that did quite good numbers on YouTube. Like, people really liked it. And then I did one of Avenged Sevenfold, and that was kind of similar. And I did one of Dream Theater, in my last year of uni, which was really difficult. That was,
What
that
song, if
compared,
I may ask?
huh?
Which song was it?
It was just like, it was like 20
Okay,
songs.
yeah, a medley, a full medley. Yeah, I
Yeah,
see.
it was like, yeah, it was just like a bunch of their stuff from like, most of their albums, just kind of like squished into into a sort of overture type thing. And yeah, basically that picked up quite a lot of steam, and I think I sent it to Jordan on like Facebook or Instagram or something, because I always just sent them to the artist just to see if they um if they liked it, if they even bothered to listen to it. And Jordan really liked it, and he actually like got in touch and wanted to like chat about it, and he was really, really lovely, and yeah, just seemed like super kind of into what I do, and started kind of giving me like bits and pieces to work on, and like kind of little like collaboration things that he's doing, because he's doing so much stuff. He works with like everybody,
Yeah.
and he's super into like the sort of music tech apps and stuff like that. So I started doing some stuff with him, and that for me was just like, because like he's like these guys are sort of, when you're a teenager, you like these guys are just like gods,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
they're these sort of like, yeah, superhuman, like unattainable levels of ability and musicianship. And yeah, so when I started working with him, I was like, this is crazy. This is like, just I can't even believe this is
Yeah.
happening. But then you get kind of quite used to it, and I don't know, you realize that, oh, these just guys, just kind of, they're just very good at what they do. And especially like, I don't know, people like Jordan, they've just got like no ego, are like super super friendly, super lovely, um, and I think it would be quite easy to let that get to you, when you're kind of like, when you're at the
Just
top
starting
of
out.
you when you're at the top of the pile like that. I imagine it would be easy to just become like a bit of a dick, but
Yep.
like most people who are kind of high profile in their field are generally not like that.
I kind of agree to that, because I've had similar experiences through the podcast where I've had people that I thought were like, when I was growing up, like these guys are gods, like
Yeah,
or like and then like when we talk to them, and they, like how you mentioned, they're just guys, like they're just better at us because they have been doing it for a longer time than us. They're still dudes at the end of the day, and they like to joke and chat around, and like and I think like the ego, like I think ego is quite on the very, everybody has their egos, but like especially in the prog, either you have two kinds of guys who play prog music and then go listen to Carly Rae Jepsen, and secondly who make playing prog music their whole personality, that dude, look at me, I'm not so
yeah,
cool because I can play in 7/8, like look at me. So I
yeah.
never really like those guys, and I'm glad that none of the people that I know are like that, but I do know a lot of people outside that exist like that. And even you, like you just have a project for like summertime prog just for fun, like it's not your personality, it's your alter ego, if I may.
Oh man, I couldn't. I don't think I could make prog just be my purely my thing, and do nothing else, because like, oh man, I get so lost in it, and so sick of it, like when I'm doing it, even just as a side project. It is one of the only it's one of the only things that I do that is purely mine, and is just like an outlet for me to do like exactly what I want, and I don't have anybody else telling me, to change it, or how it should be. Um, and so that's great. But the other side of that is that I am my own worst critic, and I will
Yep.
just spend like days agonizing over stuff that is probably gonna not even be like noticeable to like the average listener. And everybody knows, everybody who's been doing this a while like knows what that feels like. And I think that's just part of, you know, being in your own head, and not being able to always be sort of completely objective and sensible when you're thinking of sort of bigger picture, you know.
I see what you mean. So, do you think, like, since Star System was like a totally different project than Regressor, and like whatever you do with film score is like totally different from these genres. Do you think like having multiple outlets for creativity, music wise, helps you, like, gain a better sense of self, that you're not just this guy or that guy, but you are a vessel for creativity to flow in as many directions as you want and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I thrive on like variation, and I think I'm the kind of person that gets bored and restless like quite quickly if I'm doing the same thing for an extended period of time. And so I really like to have, you know, multiple outlets that I can do this for a week or two, and then I can do this, and then I can, you know, and then some things might be longer, and I might have to be on something for, you know, a few months, or I might have to, you know, be on something for a few days. But I like that it's, you know, just never monotonous, and it's never the same thing, because I think, yeah, like I was saying before, I think I get, if I'm working on like a, I don't know, an EP or something for Regressor, you know, after a certain amount of time, I'm like, oh my god, like I don't know how people do just this, you know. I don't know how people can just have like their project, like their, like, I don't know, whether it's like a solo artist or like a band. I'm not, like, the idea of that just being like the only thing that I have, it would just like, I think I would just get so sick of it.
I
Um,
see where you're coming from. Yeah.
yeah, and I think also just because I love so many different types of music, and I have so many different things I want to like try out, and I think it's hard to do that under one project where, you know, prog is great because you can be quite, you can really push the boat out, and you don't, you're not as confined stylistically as you are in other genres, but still at the same time, like, you do have to be coherent, and you do have to be consistent, and especially once you've kind of developed a sound and that seems to be resonating with people,
Yep.
you can't just like then go and release a jazz album because you want to. I mean, you could, but it would maybe not be the most sensible uh, endeavor, you know, especially if you've, you know, built a following based on the stuff that you've put out previously. So I really like to be able to just, yeah, uh, go and write piano music for a
Yeah.
thing, or go and do like, you know, something completely different to Regressor, if the opportunity comes around, you know.
I see. I have a funny story for this. One of my friends, like very good friends, is also a great musician, like a proper modern metalcore guy. He showed, like, I already knew you, and I've like, known your stuff since your Crescent Spoon EP. But he came up to me one day and sent me a link of your one of your newer songs. Was it Sundays or
Mm.
I don't remember? But then he was like, yeah, I wish I could make, I will always regret not making this kind of music. And I'm like, dude, you are in your early 20s like me, like, you are not an old man, why are you saying stuff like this? He's like, no, but I'm like, a modern metal guy now, so I don't know if I should do that. I'm like, that makes no sense, like, just start a new project if you want to.
Yeah, it is like, it is really tough. I think that's one of the hardest things to do, is to actually just start, you know, to just make a start, and put something new out. Is like, especially nowadays, because I feel like I spent feel like I spend more time like keeping up with social media and how that works than I do actually like making music nowadays. For for Regressor anyway, because it is just it is just like I'm an independent artist, and it is just me, um, in terms of like how I'm putting stuff out and how I'm promoting stuff and all of the like visual side of it. It is so overwhelming, and it's very easy to get kind of discouraged, I think. Because it's the great thing about social media now is that it has leveled the playing field, and anybody can make music and put it out for you know little to no money, um, and it will be on the same platforms. It will be in the same spaces as the biggest artists in the world. Uh, but that also means that there is just an insane amount of noise to cut through,
Yes,
and
yes.
just like the competition is ridiculous. And I like being in a kind of a slightly more niche scene, because it's a lot easier to
Get through.
it's a lot easier to get a sense of like who's doing what and who's kind of coming up and stuff like that. I can't imagine doing something that was I can't imagine doing something like hip hop or something that was like more mainstream, that had just like way more artists trying to break through. I think even in the sort of like instrumental prog scene, that feels pretty overwhelming. Like just the amount of artists that there are like knocking about. so yeah, I think I totally understand why people would struggle to even like get started.
Yeah, but come like a follow up point for that would for me would be that um, it's that your personal brand, like because it's like we are surrounded by insane music, and but like, are you able to put a face to that insane music? Is I think where what people are trying to do. So for example, like your music's sick, but like you have a visual aesthetic and a certain vibe associated to it, that hey, I'm gonna release my music only around summer. So like I was a little bummed when it didn't happen last year, but it happened this year. So like you have that thing that okay, people are always gonna be tuning in around summer because it gives them that vibe, and on top of that, it's amazing music. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Um, yeah, that is funny, because that stuff pretty much all happened like by accident. I didn't really plan to just release stuff in the summer initially. It just kind of happened that that was when I had time,
I
and,
see.
that was how it worked out. Because I was writing sort of for the rest of the year, and then it worked out well that I could kind of drop a release in the summer. And then yeah, I think just coupled with the fact that the it's quite summery, it's quite upbeat, and it just kind of became a bit of a thing. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess like this kind of works. This kind of works for the aesthetic, to be putting music out in the summer. And yeah, and then the stuff with like the kind of settings of where I'm like filming stuff, and the outfits and all that stuff was, yeah, very much just like a kind of, it felt very natural, and it didn't really feel like I was kind of like, okay, so I'm going to make music like this, and I'm gonna release it at this time of year, and I'm gonna wear this, and it kind of all just like happened
Happen snowball.
quite organically. Like it wasn't really I didn't start this as like a I'm gonna make summer jams, and I'm gonna wear Hawaiian shirts. It was like it just kind of it just kind of happened over time.
Yeah, because
And
it's only this year that you have started doing Hawaiian shirts. Like you were in a full jumpsuit last time, like in garden party music video and stuff. Like You were very
Yeah,
like,
because like I wasn't kind of, I don't know, I wasn't thinking like about the visuals and the sort of general aesthetic that much. Then I was more kind of focused on the music, I guess. And
fair
I'm
enough,
still,
fair
you know,
enough.
I'm still focused on the music like above everything else. But I do think branding is like just so important now, and having a visual kind of hook that sets you apart from others and will kind of make
Yeah,
people remember you is so important, you know. And there is never anything more important than the music and the quality of the music, and that is something that I, you know, that I make sure I am like completely happy with before anything else. But yeah, it is the visual side of stuff is become a lot more important to me, I think, over the
yeah.
last couple of years.
I mean, I have a similar story. I for my first music video, I wore like a green hoodie and a white pant, and like for some reason, for the second music video, I did the same thing, and for the third also, I did the same thing. So now I am obliged to wear the same thing because it's my brand identity now.
Yeah, yeah, but I think that's good. I think that's a really, that's a good thing. And yeah, it sounds like it happened just quite accidentally
Yes.
for you the same way it did for me. Um, but yeah, on the flip side, there are artists who just have like the exact same like sort of camera setup and the exact same color scheme and lights in like every single video, you know, that they post. And I think that is also quite like it never changes, and that is also quite I think powerful in a way, because it means that whenever I see a video by you know, Jack, for example,
Yeah.
Jack Gardner,
Jack,
it's like
yeah, Jack's videos look like they are shot
it's
at the
like
same day.
it's like I can pick that out like a mile away, because you know it's the same purple lights, it's like the same blue guitar, you know. And there's part of me that thinks like I try so hard to make everything, you know, to make every video that I post different from the last one. um but then I think like, oh man, should I be like actually trying to be more more similar with the stuff I'm posting, because otherwise like people are just gonna not recognize that it's me every time, you know. If they're not a follower, if they're just randomly coming across it uh on TikTok or Instagram for like the fourth or fifth time, you know.
I see what you mean. And one thing that I've noticed around this time is like you have been putting out a lot of like short form videos to promote your songs. So just based on that experiment, and through all social media platforms, are there any insights that you have gathered about short form content, about conversion rate, so that the people that watch your videos actually turn into follower? Because I've looked at a few comments on your YouTube, and they're like, I am here from YouTube Shorts and I'm not like disappointed and stuff like that. So I'm very interested to know about the analytics and insights.
Oh man, yeah, I think about this stuff way too much, and I don't think it's I think there are kind of two sides to it. One is that like content can be very good and very engaging, and more engaging than another piece of content that you do, and that does hook people in, and people do want to see more of that, and that could be the difference between someone just passing through and someone actually like clicking follow. Um, but then on the flip side, there, because of the way that stuff like TikTok and YouTube Shorts work now, particularly, is that it's like it's so hard to gauge whether your content has done well because it's actually good, or because it's just like it was just like the right time to post that particular thing. Because like, man, I've posted stuff that I thought was garbage. Like, I really didn't think, okay, maybe not garbage, but you know, I wouldn't post anything I thought was like complete shit. But you know, there was always like stuff that I
Yeah,
think is better than
it's
others.
not the highest of standards of stuff.
Yeah, and there's always stuff that I know that I've not put as much effort into, or I know doesn't look as good, doesn't sound as good as something else, and I'll post it and it'll do like really well, or it'll do like way better than like the last like 10 things I've posted that I thought were all better than this one. And this is more a thing with TikTok, I've noticed, and YouTube Shorts as well,
I see.
but particularly TikTok. It just feels so like random, and because you are, especially if you don't have a big following on something like TikTok, like you are at the mercy of the algorithm, and because it is kind of designed to have people just like post as much stuff as possible in the hopes that something kicks off and they go viral or whatever.
Yep.
It does feel like just quite random and quite hit and miss, and
Hmm.
that can be in a way like great because it's like, oh, I did something very low effort and I've been like massively rewarded for it, but also it's like how am I supposed to tell uh what's what to put the effort into if I could work really hard on like a good bit of content, what I think is a good bit of content, put it out, and it does like very little compared to like something I did last week that I spent 5 minutes on.
I see. So would you say that like doesn't really like for the social media game, like that reaching out to more people and stuff, firstly, do you feel like your goal has been to reach to as many people as possible, or is to put your best foot forward? And second question is that like have you seen an increase in the amount of like audience conversion from everyone who started following you directly onto your music page in terms of new listeners?
um well, to answer your first question, I think for me it's not necessarily about reaching as many people as possible. It's more about reaching the right people, and
Okay.
I think just especially with like this kind of music, it's I would say that it is fairly accessible. What I'm doing, it's more accessible than a lot of other uh, a lot of other instrumental prog, but still, I don't I I'm I don't just assume that like everybody will hear this and think, oh, this is great. So I think I try and like through uh, hashtags, through like whatever means of targeting um, particular groups of people that you could use on social media. I try and do that, because yeah, if you get your thing in front of like
That
hundred
audience
thousand
segment.
people, if you get your thing in front of 100,000 people that like don't really listen to that kind of stuff, then that's not it's not going to be nearly as valuable as getting your stuff in front of 100,000 people that could be really into that, and would be could be like potential followers.
I see what you
um
mean.
and yeah, in terms of what was your second question? Sorry, you were talking about like
I was talking about like how has been the conversion rates from posting
yeah.
shorts to actual listeners has been for you.
I think it's that's harder for me to tell just because I haven't really gone into like I try not to like really analyze my numbers too much because it just makes me sad usually. um
Fair, fair
if
enough.
I
Yeah.
if I get too bogged down in like what the like exact gains from something I've posted are, then I'll if it does well, great, but it doesn't always do well, and it's easy for me to get a bit like disheartened if I see that I've gained very little, or if I've posted something and it's like no one's really like leaving any comments or whatever, I'm just like, oh no, maybe and I, I'll just end up like overanalyzing it, you know, and I think it's better to just like, you posted something, okay, cool, just move on to the next thing, because I think it's one of the problems with social media and the way social media works for independent musicians now is that like you get so emotionally invested
Yep.
in the numbers, and that can be really disheartening. And I do end up doing it inevitably, but I really try not to. I really try not to look at like my like follower count too often, or like not look at like the amount of likes I've got on the last three things I've posted, and try and figure out why one got more than the other, because yeah, it's stressful enough writing music, and like I don't need
Yeah, yeah,
I don't need the like other added level of like you know, overthinking, you know.
yeah. Because I really feel that, ever since every like 2016 and so on, the numbers have gotten arbitrary. Like having big views on a video is helpful, but it doesn't mean anything. Like I do know people who have 100K followers, but if they put out a product or a piece of, like, merch or gear or something of their own, like a very few people would buy it. So like then uh
Yeah,
like so the 100K followers are not your hardcore followers. They're just people that think that you're cool and what you're
yeah,
doing and stuff.
totally. I think it's like what ultimately, like what is the reason for somebody following you? I think that's super important,
Yep.
because it's like, if you know, if you want to see people like just shredding, and you want to see people like just playing like insane technical stuff, like don't follow me, because I'm not really going to be able to do that for you. You know, you want to follow you want to follow Jack, or you want to follow like
Spiro.
Tim Henson or something, you know, because like that's like a big part of what they do, is just like crazy virtuosic mastery of their instrument. Uh, Whereas like my my whole thing is just like I'm just putting out music that I think is cool, and you know, nice looking videos. And if you like those things, then I'm sure you will be able to get something out of what I'm posting. And then also, yeah, I do try and post stuff that is more like, I guess, an insight to my process, and more like educational, and
Yeah.
you know, just more of like a behind the scenes thing. But that's it's a lot more labor intensive doing that. And yeah, again, like when I have done that in the past, it's like I'm very much doing it because I feel like it's going to help um, with people who, engaging with my channels, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And that is one of the things where, when it doesn't, I really get like kind of bummed out, and because I'm like, because that stuff takes like a lot more time
Yep.
to put together and to edit, and it's not so like, it's not so easy as just like playing a section of a song in my bedroom and filming it and then putting it up. And it's like, yeah, it's at that point where it starts to feel like a second job, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. And since you already have like a main job like social media, and like Regressor is not your main thing, then it totally makes sense to not put a lot of energy into something that you for sure know that is not, like, output driven a lot. Then
Yeah,
totally makes sense, man. And sadly enough, like, social media, especially shorts, reward everyone who have, like, vertical content and shot with some sort of camera audio, which is, I don't really know, like, why that's the case. Perhaps they're trying to get more people across all boards with a cell phone to make more videos and promote that. So
yeah, I have noticed that it's there hasn't really been much of a difference for me in terms of how people respond to stuff that is shot with like a nicer camera versus stuff that is just shot on a phone. Um, People say that you're actually just better shooting stuff on a phone now because it's kind of built for those platforms just initially, and B, like people can relate to it more, because it's like I could do that. I have the means to do that also, and so maybe that makes it more engaging to people. But yeah, I've you know especially with the Crescent Spoon stuff, I was doing a lot more kind of professionally shot stuff. Uh,
I love that.
oh man, I loved it too. I think I still think it looks great, but I think the amount of time and energy and effort, um, to put into that for a project like this where I could do the exact same thing and get the same kind of response from just doing it on a phone. It does make it feel like a bit too much of an investment.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Uh, yeah. Whatever. Like it's weird because like back in the day, virality was directly proportional to what business you would get, but now virality doesn't promise anything. Like it's
Yeah,
just, hey, I've got 1 million views on my reel. What about it now?
dude.
Nothing.
Yeah, no, I know people who got like millions of views on like one thing that they randomly posted. They didn't even think it was just like just another day, and they just
Yeah.
posted the thing and it just did really well, and they got like a few more followers out of it, and it's that's there on their page, but ultimately I think that is not going to be your ticket to success, and
Yep.
it could help, um, but it shouldn't be the be all and end all. I think there's been too much value put on the idea of going viral, and just in terms of how these platforms are geared, that is now a big part of what people are trying to do. But I think it's just changing so quickly and so constantly.
Yeah.
Just
It's hard to keep
even
up.
it's so hard to keep up, and it'll be different in like a year's time. It'll be different in 6 months' time. It's already so different, than it was like making instrumental prog and putting it up online like 6 or 7 years ago. It was just like a completely different story, and it's always very easy to kind of think, oh man, I wish I'd like really cashed in on it when it was like that, because now it's so much more difficult. And it it's always going to feel, I think, like it was easier 2 years ago, and that you wish that you'd like really like done the thing that people were doing 2 years ago. But yeah, there's not really much point in thinking like that. You just got to do the best you can do, and not make yourself like miserable doing it. If you don't like dancing on camera, or you don't like talking to camera, or you don't just do things that don't come naturally to you because you think this is what I have to do for people to hear my music, or engage with my art in any sense.
I that's really valid because then you start going on off that tangent, and then like you go further down and realize that shit, I regret doing that. So
Yeah, yeah,
I see what you
exactly.
mean. And
And
yeah.
man, like people can tell, if something is not really you. People can tell even through a phone, even through like an Instagram reel. If this is something that is not like coming naturally to you, uh, unless you are a very good actor, that will be apparent. And so yeah, you can get better at stuff. I think like I used to hate like talking to camera, but purely through making myself do it and just like forcing myself to do it over the last like few years, I've got a bit better at it. But I still wouldn't say that it's like I'm cool doing that, you know,
Yeah.
and I can and I'm happy doing that whenever, because it's you know, some people are better at it than others, and yeah, I think that you should never just like, there's a healthy amount of putting yourself out of your comfort zone, for the purpose of making content, and yeah, if you go beyond that and you just kind of hating every minute of it,
Yeah,
um,
you're losing your sense of self, and like,
yeah,
then what's the
um,
point of making music, right?
exactly, and people will be able to tell. You know, people can tell when you're not being genuine, and I think that's a
That's
big
so
part
true.
of it's a big part of what social media is now to musicians. You know, it's a and for fans, it's a way to um, engage with and relate to this person on an actual like real human level. And so, if you're not being genuine and you're not like you're not being you, then like how can people do that?
Yeah. That's really true, and I think, yeah, more people should like. I mean, obviously, a lot of people do internalize it, but sometimes, like, we lose sight of things. So, yeah, I'm definitely gonna clip that.
No worries, man.
And one, like, the most, like, beautiful thing that I personally like about you as an artist is the fact that you have a freaking project with your own mom. Like, bro, I'll tell you what, like, there is no artist greater to collaborate with. There's no artist, like, more fulfilling to work with than your own mom. Like, dude, like, she's a birth giver to you. So, like, having a project and having to share that experience of music, firstly, it's so rare. I don't know, I barely know anyone who has done that. And secondly, I've heard some of it, and it's beautiful, man. So, talk me about it. Like, when did you start that, and like, what was your mom's initial thoughts about it, and like, how's it going? Do you have anything planned ahead?
Yeah, no, that's it's funny because that was another thing that just kind of came about completely unplanned almost. It started because I just wanted to have like a little piano project. My I play the piano not very well, but I do enjoy playing the piano, and I like writing I like writing piano music, but I never really had like a proper outlet for it. And then my buddy, when I was at film school, started a piano project, and he just had these like really gorgeous sounding like real piano recordings, that he got done of his demos, um, and they just sounded so good. And I was like, oh man, like I'd love to try something kind of in the same vein, but maybe with like a, you know, my own spin on it, obviously. And so yeah, and so I basically just wrote a bunch of demos that were kind of like super chill piano, but inspired by kind of Scottish, Irish, like folk music, essentially.
I see.
That was my kind of idea because I'd not really heard that before, and yeah, just kind of struck me as something that people might like, and I really love that stuff, and I wasn't really getting much of a chance to kind of do that kind of stuff in anything else at the time. Uh, so yeah, so I wrote this stuff, and I wasn't really sure like how to get it recorded, because I didn't really know anybody, and I couldn't really play. Although it's not like crazy difficult stuff, I couldn't really play it myself. I definitely couldn't like record it to a level that I would have been satisfied with it. And then at one point, I was like, oh, I wonder if my mom knows anyone, and I think I like ended up talking to her because she's got like, she knows billions of people, um, and yeah, and then it just became like really obvious that, oh, you should try recording it, and it wasn't even like, oh, this is going to be like a duo. This was very much like a, oh, could you record some music for me, like, so that I could say it's mine. Uh, and when we did it, and it was just such a like wonderful experience, uh, and I was a bit nervous, kind of going into it because, like, she's my mom, and I've never worked with her like as a professional, and so much of her skill set and her, career, I really took for granted when I was a kid, and um, I never really understood just like how good she was, how good she is, and I, yeah, so like going in and recording stuff, I was like, oh my god, are we going to end up like, are we just going to end up having a massive fallout because I wanna like, I want her to like redo that bar or whatever. Um, but it was like, yeah, it was like really, really lovely, and she just kind of completely just transformed it, into something beyond anything I could have imagined.
That's beautiful, man.
And,
That's
and
really
and
awesome.
and immediately just became like, an integral part of it, and I wanted to, from that point on, I wanted to make it something for us, that we would both have kind of equal share in, rather than just like another Joe project.
I see, I see. So then how did like the second time or the second iteration of the project work out? Like, was it more fluid than first time, or I
Yeah,
see, okay.
definitely. It felt like the first one was us kind of getting a bit of a sense of how we approach stuff, and I think just working out um, a lot of the creases in terms of our individual creative processes, and also just like technical stuff, um, because recording stuff like that's that kind of intimate and that sort of environment, um, dependent, is also quite a new thing for me, or it was quite a new thing the first time we did it. Um, so yeah, the second time we did it, it ran a lot smoother, and um, yeah, I'm super excited to do more stuff with her. It's just, it always feels like it never feels stressful or, um, you know particularly sort of daunting or difficult, which is, you know as
That's
it should
awesome.
feel, right?
Yeah, as it should feel. Yeah, and that's lovely to hear. And yeah, I mean, just having to share that moment, like with a parent outside of your normal father, like father mother son relationship.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's really, it has definitely created a whole new kind of dimension to our relationship now, which is really, really lovely, and something I never really saw coming as well, which is
That's
which is
awesome.
nice.
Yeah. And one very sick thing that I found out recently was that you got a chance to work with Devin Townsend.
Yeah. I'm currently working with Devin on his new project, The Moth, which is super cool. I can't really say too much about it, as you can imagine, but
Yep.
yeah, all I will say is, he's the best. I know everybody says that like he's the best, but he's the
He's
best,
the
man.
funniest. Have you seen his Instagram page? Like, that's what I love. That, when you're so cool at what you do that you don't give a shit about your Instagram or your LinkedIn or whatever. Like that's the peak of, like, being
Yeah,
good at
man.
something.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's just like I was saying earlier, the perfect example of someone who is just like completely egoless, that absolutely like has all of the accolades. You know, he's like one of the top people in what he does. Um, but he is just the most humble, lovely, down to earth guy. Not an ounce of that has gone to his head, and yeah, he's also just incredibly talented and just so kind. He's just like the loveliest guy, and he's funny as fuck as well. It's like, honestly, man, I don't think I've ever laughed so much like working with someone as I have with Devin. You know,
that's 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 awesome. I'm really really like excited because like you will be also part of the project. So whenever it comes out, I will be looking forward to it, man. So that's pretty much the end of like the questions that I have had.
good thing, man.
But is there something that you want to talk about that you feel that people should know more about as far as music and creativity and stuff goes?
Um, oh man, caught me off guard with that one.
I'm sorry.
Um, no, no, not at all. I think
Take your time.
I, I, I think for I can only really speak for myself and for my own individual experiences. Um, but honestly, the main thing I would say is just like if it's music that you're doing and that's what you want to do, don't let anything kind of get in the way of that. Like, don't get bogged down in like, oh, I've got to navigate social media in a particular way, and I've got to you know, look a certain way, come across a certain way. I've got to post every, you know, this often, and it's got to be like this and that. I think just the most important thing is that the music is of a high standard, and if the music if the music speaks to people, then everything else you do is secondary, you know, and it can help, but ultimately, like, no one's going to be able to no one's going to be able to relate to your music if it's not, you know, if you've not put your heart and soul into it in the first place. So I would say, just on the subject of, you know, being an independent artist, uh, in this day and age with not a massive following. Like, I don't have a big following, and I have like varying numbers on different platforms. Like, but I still feel like I am very much like at the bottom end of the scene still, and yeah, I just try and focus on the music, and you know, not let the other stuff get to me as much as I possibly can. It does and it will do, but I think just as long as you are putting like everything you have into your music, and you're constantly like trying to develop and evolve, I think it's I've seen it happen where people who are very talented and could do really really great things are just scared to put something out until it's ready. They don't feel like it's ready, and it's like, dude, this is your first song. Like, just put it out, and then and then make the next one better. You know, there's no point in just kind of um, beating about the bush and thinking like, this has to be perfect. Like,
Progress over
after a certain
perfection.
yeah, after a certain point, you're not going to make it any better. You know,
Yep.
it's you just gotta, like someone once said, like, um, art is never finished; it's just abandoned. And I think
Yes.
that really helps me uh, in terms of like how I manage the very last stage of working on a track, because like, yeah, I most tracks. most stuff that I do, I'm like, I could just keep working on this. There's always going to be something that I can find in here that I could improve upon, or I could make it better, or I could make it different. And after a certain point, I think it's a slippery slope, and it's very easy to get lost in that. So I would say, yeah, just don't. Although it should be of the highest standard that you can possibly create, know when you've reached that, and don't just like agonize uh, over like the last 0.5% after you've crossed that threshold, because yeah, you will end up just you will just end up kind of fanning around with it for forever and not making it any better. So just put it out and move on to the next thing, and it's probably going to be the same with the next thing, but you'll be a little bit better.
Fair enough. Yeah. And do you want people to know anything about your project, or do you want to promote yourself? Like this is like the segment to do that.
Oh man. Well, if you like, happy sunny prog rock, then yeah, go give it a listen. If you think that's up your street, then or if you've got like any questions, any like technical questions, any just like general general questions, like yeah, shoot me a message, leave a comment. Like I try and reply to it. That's something I've been really like trying to get better at the last couple of years, is just like trying to respond to everybody who reaches out, which can be quite difficult across like different platforms. But like, yeah, I think that's the least I can do. People are listening to my music, and people are like, bigging me up and adding me to the playlist and stuff that they like. The least I can do is just like um, answer questions that people throw my way.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much, Joseph, for being on the podcast. It was lovely having you.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. It's been real nice.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna stop recording now, and
Good thing.